The King and the Drum. Once upon a time, there lived a king in central India. He was very handsome, but very vain. He looked at himself constantly in mirrors, in pools of water, even in other people's eyes when they spoke of him. "I am the handsomest king on earth," he said to his courtiers. He paid less attention to ruling his kingdom than he did to having his hair styled and his body oiled. As a result, his people grew poorer and unhappier. But the king did not care. Why? He boasted one day in court, "I am probably more handsome than all the gods." Unfortunately for the king, a particular bad-tempered god happened to be flying and was incensed at what he saw and heard. "Something will have to be done about this king." He searched in his mind for an appropriate punishment. Then his eyes fell upon a bull. "Horns!" The god clapped his hands with malicious glee. "I'll see how his handsomeness likes himself with horns." When the king awoke the next morning, he followed his normal routine. First, he drew his mirror out from under his pillow and gazed into it. Suddenly, the guards outside the king's chamber heard a loud shriek. They came rushing in to find the king sitting upright in bed with a large pillow on his head. "Out! Out!" he waved, trembling a finger at them. As soon as they backed away, he shouted after them, "Send for the royal barber immediately." The royal barber was a cheeky, talkative little man. He came in briskly. "You're up early today, your majesty." "But why?" The king broke in. "Stop your patter and come close to my bed." As the surprised barber drew closer, the king said in his most commanding voice, "Barber, I am about to show you something. But if you talk about it to a single living soul, I will have you flogged and hanged." The king slowly removed the pillow from his head. "Oh!" The barber clapped his hands to his mouth in horror. "Well, don't just stand there," said the king impatiently. "Do something to cover them up." The barber tugged the king's hair this way and that way and managed to cover the horns partially. The king put his nightcap on to hide the rest. "Now go and tell the court I'm unwell. I will not see anyone." He sat up and glared at the barber. "And remember my warning." The barber fled. As soon as the door of the bedchamber closed, he started laughing. The people of the palace stopped him and asked him the reason for his mirth. But the barber only shook his head helplessly and ran laughing through the halls. "I will die if I don't tell someone," he groaned. "My stomach is swelling with the secret." He saw the tamarind tree standing in the middle of the royal courtyard. He went up to it and whispered the secret to its trunk. That night there was a fierce storm and the tamarind tree was blown down. The king was informed through the door, for he would not see anyone, and he commanded the tree to be given to the royal musician. "Let let him make a drum from the trunk of this tamarind tree and play it outside my door." Soon the drum made out of tamarind wood was ready. The courtiers assembled outside the king's door, and the musician began to play. But instead of the thum, thum, thum that everyone expected, the tamarind drum intoned, "The Raja has horns on his head. The Raja has horns on his head." The court burst out laughing, and the king cried with rage. "I won't stay in the palace a moment longer," he shouted. "I'll go to the forest and live by myself." He tore the nightcap off his head and ran out of the palace, seizing the tamarind drum on his way out. The king lived for many years in the forest. He learnt about the beauty of the world around him. He learnt to care for creatures smaller than himself. He grew strong, wise and selfless. His only companion was the tamarind drum. And the drum, when he beat it, it gave him all the advice and experience of the old tree. He learnt to play it so beautifully that even the spirits of the trees were charmed, and they went to meet the god who had given him the horns. "Forgive him," they pleaded. "He has changed. Remove his thorns and give back his kingdom." The god waved his hands, and the horns disappeared. During the day, the king went down to a forest pool to drink some water. While cupping his hands, he saw his reflection, and his lean, sun-tanned face looked back at him without any horns. As he sat up in surprise, several horse riders burst into the clearing, and he saw his courtiers. They knelt down before him. "Your Majesty, forgive us and come back. The kingdom needs you." The king went back to his realm. He kept his tamarind drum beside him always, and he ruled wisely. And yes, the barber kept his head but lost his job. It is the end of the story. Now, the story I was narrating to you, I picked it from the book On the Mythology of Indian Plants by Maneka Gandhi. So this story is related to the tamarind tree. It is a large, handsome evergreen tree with spreading branches. The tamarind tree. The trunk is thick and short, and the bark rough, almost black, covered with long cracks. Each graceful airy leaf is separated into 10 more pairs of fringed stems. They are a brilliant green when they grow first, gradually turning into a dusty dark green. The 3-petaled flowers are a pale yellow with red veins. The flowers cluster in small bunches around the leaves. The fruits hang like long, thick, curved beams and turn rust-colored when they ripen. The pulp of this fruit has a special tarty taste and is used in curries and chutneys, as you all know. It is also used to polish brass. The seeds are boiled and ground and used by tribals as flour. The seeds are used as flour. The wood is used for agricultural implements, and the leaves make a pretty yellow dye which is used on silk. Most parts of the tree are used in medicinal tonics. In the World War II, it was a major fuel for the gasogen units that powered Indian trucks. So this was a little story about the tamarind tree. And I hope you enjoyed listening to this. Thank you.